Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Bang War Variety channel. In today's video we're going to be doing is showcasing this piece of weaponry that I have here. So I've noticed in my videos that, or I haven't really gotten into any really large battles yet, because it is a great deal of work to make videos, like I make them now with editing and things like that. But I've noticed that I may need a piece of large, heavy artillery for if I do a siege or anything like that where heavy artillery would be needed. And so that's what I built this for, because that is like a need that I've noticed that I have if I'm going to keep doing things like this. So up until this point, I have a 4-inch field mortar. And so basically this is my first piece of light artillery. And so this is effective to a point, but it doesn't quite have the range and or power of this, or a large siege gun would have. So that's why this has been built. I also have this, which I don't think is considered artillery, but the RPGL is a rocket-propelled grenade launcher, hence its name. And that works against armored units, or if you need to blow something up. But let's say you have targets that are up to 1,000, 2,000 miles away, or if you need to land a shell somewhere, that's what this is for, or launch them on top of a city or a town or something that you're raiding or you're attacking or the enemy's doing that. That's what this is for. So with that being said, that is with the purpose established of why this has been built. Let's dive into this.
Alright, so this is the HPAC 146 millimeter. That's the name of the gun. And then down here, all we have is just some warning labels. And then we have it up in German here because when the Bucketheads came to power, they started recruiting a lot of Germans in their soldiers as well as in the German divisions. And there were a lot of terrorist groups that worked for the Buckethead empires that were German. So the second most spoke language in the world at that time changed from in the future times changed from Spanish to German again, like it used to be like back in the early days. So that's why everything, when it used to be in English and then in Spanish underneath, it's now in English and German, because those languages started to become less popular as this became more popular, and that would change again after the wars. And so then that's basically the detail of that gun. So the HPAC 146 millimeter.
So the abbreviation HPAC stands for high power artillery cannon, and 146 millimeter is the caliber of the gun. And that doesn't seem like a very big caliber for a siege gun, because some of them back in like World War I and stuff, they were like 300 and 400 millimeters. But we will see why that is a larger caliber during this war with the design of the shell, which I will show you now.
So this is the main shell that is fired out of this. So as you can see here, it says 146 millimeter high explosive. And the reason it looks like a football, or is a football, is because when the Bucketheads came to power, they destroyed the economy. So basic things like buying artillery shells or brass for it became hard. But these were inexpensive. So basically what you did is you filled these up with gunpowder, mainly the resistance. They bought these, like they would fill it up inside a football. So you can see where this has been stitched back together, where it was filled with powder and a primer and all of that. And so basically this is the main shell that is fired out of it. And this looks a lot wider than a 146 millimeter shell. That's because this is 6 inches across almost, or about 5 3/4 inches across at its widest point. When the barrel that fires it is 6 inches. So that is about a 146 millimeter shell. And so they also fired some more lethal types of shells. So this is a 127 millimeter incendiary round. So this is when you needed to cause mass destruction. We will not be firing these today because of the. It's just a mess to clean up at the range, and things like that. And so that's basically the incendiary, and this would cause widespread damage if you need to scorch something or burn an infantry advance down. Sorry about that. And then our other shell here is a 131 millimeter cyanogen round, and this is a gas round. So they used these in World War I somewhat. This is where that technology was somewhat used. It would launch a shell out, and it would be gas filled inside, and it would just fill the air with gas. So cyanogen is a colorless gas with a pungent odor, and its placard number is 1026, I believe. So I did some research on that. And so that's what this cell. We will not be firing this either today. There's not really much to see other than it just fills the air with gas. And these do not fit as well in the gun. They actually have to sit in there on something because they are smaller than the barrel itself than the other shell is. Alright, so now that I have detailed all that, the shells and the name and everything, now we're going to look at the basic design of the gun. So, this gun here features the this thing here. That's Tucker, by the way, in case you're wondering what he is. Cairn Terrier dog. But back to this. This is a breather here. So that's what this is. You see this vent. That's the breather to let excess gas out during the firing process. It's also for the other thing that it's for is this cap here. It doesn't have any specific setting that it goes on, so you can push it on clear back here if you wanted to. Well, the thing is you know, the idiots that put it on are the untrained soldiers of mostly terrorist organizations that just recruited soldiers really fast and weren't trained. They pushed this cap on too far, and then they couldn't get it back off with their hand. And so an irritated sergeant or a corporal would have to take this off and this is the standard piece that came with it. It's a piece of cardboard, but it worked for this. Because remember, we're trying to make sure that all the parts that come with the gun, they're not very expensive or anything. So cardboard was cheap. Everything is as cheap as possible to decrease the cost of production. They would take this in here, and you're going to see the detail of this. The cap's on really tight, not really, but then you just ram it off like that. And then yell at the private to never do that again. And he will be demoted to cooking duty if he does that again. And so that's what that was for. We'll detail the cap and everything after that. And so that's the breather, and that's what we get the gist of that. This is the piece where the barrel goes into, this piece here. And this is just a handle, wrought iron or black iron handle to hold on when loading and firing the weapon. Cap, as you saw before, pulls on, and then that's where the shell is going to go in there. And then that just goes on like that, not too tight. But most buckethead soldiers and resistance soldiers, they were trained enough to not do stupid things like that. But it was easy to do things like that when you were in the pressure of battle. But these were usually set up away from the battle, shelling position, so there wasn't as much tension. This here is the firing crank. So this is wired to the firing pin. I'm not going to crank this the whole way because then that'll click my firing pin, and these guns aren't really designed for that because they're cheaper. But once this came back to its original position, the gun fired. The firing pin is in here, and I can't really show you with the type of filming setup that I got. But it's in there, and it will hit the bottom of the shell and send it off the barrel, sort of like how every other gun works. And then the safeties down here, I can't really show you that either. That will lock this crank. So if you're Larry, the weird private, and you're goofing off with your guys, and you're drunk, and you slip and fall, and somehow the crank fires, it's really hard to crank this all by accident. It's just a safety precaution, as with all dangerous high-power guns. It just locks the crank so that any unnecessary firing will be prevented. And then these up here are our elevation adjustments or distance adjustments. So you're shooting it, depends on like 2,000 yards away or a mile away or whatever you're shooting at. I use a field mortar more for a mile, but that's what those are for. And you would adjust a crank separate from this one, and a little distance meter and stuff that attaches separately to this when you're adjusting that. We won't really see that be used in filming when this gun is used, but that is attached on prior. It's not on this model because it's separate, and I do not have one. And so that is what those are for, and you would look through those and use those to eyeball that. And then this is just mounted on a cart. The cart is light enough, as light as it can be, to support this type of firearm, and it's mobile to fire. So that's basically the gun. Like I said, they made it as cheap as possible, so one, they could produce them faster because they're simpler, and two, they could save as much money because you want to produce as much of these as possible while saving money to use for other military purposes, because money is always a really big problem in warfare, especially large-scale warfare like the war against the bucketheads. And so that's with all weaponry that we see used. And so that's basically the exterior and somewhat interior design and description of how the function of this HPAC 146 millimeter. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get it loaded up. So basically, just going to pull this cap off. It has a knob on it. You're going to take the shell, point it with the strap or the threads pointing this way, and you're just going to stick it in there. Have to meander it up through. And tendency of soldiers who are untrained is to push it right in there forward. Well, that's just going to push it through the Y. We need to get it to go up into the barrel. So that's going to be this first area up in here. See how I'm pushing it up? And you can see how it goes up. We don't want to push it towards the grate. We want to push it up into the barrel. Because when you push it towards the grate, then when the firing pin goes up to hit, it's going to hit the bottom of the shell. You're going to hear a click, or nothing's going to happen if you push the shell too far, because then the firing pin's just going to flap and come back down. Or you're going to hit the shell and blow the gun and your crew up, which is the worst case scenario, which we're not going to have to worry about today, and hopefully nobody else has to worry about in the history of warfare with this weapon. And so now that we have that in properly, we're ready to shoot. And there is a safety mechanism down here. I can't show you it with that. And that locks this crank. So you can't, because that's how it fires. So when you're goofing off or whatever, and you trip and fall on this crank, and because you're drunk or whatever, drinking rum or whatever, waiting the battle out, you're probably not going to crank the whole way, but if you slip and then the gun goes off if it's loaded. So that's what the safety mechanism is on all guns. So I'm going to disengage that. And now this can be cranked and fired. Alright guys, so now here we are ready to fire the gun. Now, a couple things before we do so. We're not going to be shooting at any zombies or anything today, because as you may know, when you hit a zombie or a person with this, they're going to blow apart and there's going to be crap everywhere. Well, I got to clean that up if I shoot at any zombies or anything. So we're not going to be doing that. It's intense violence, so we don't need to be showing that. So we're just going to be shooting it for fun. And I'm not going to set my camera up so where you see the shell exploding like way off in the distance. Which you're probably not going to be able to see it, because it's way, way down there. And so we have about 500 acres. So I'm just going to be shooting this a short distance. And then you're going to hear the explosion in the distance, because you'd be amazed that stuff flies clear back here. That's why I have this mask on, in case anything does. And so I believe that is everything. So I have this all ready. Now what we're going to do is we're going to give it a fire. Actually, I'm not going to put the mask on yet. I'll quickly put that on as soon as I fire. Alright, so here we go. This gun is actually surprisingly safe with stuff coming out of the barrel and into your eyes, so we don't have to worry about having a mask on until after it fires. Alright, coming back. All right. So as you can hear there, the explosion off in the distance. And the reason for the mask on for just a short duration is because usually about 10 seconds it takes for stuff to fly back, and you'd be amazed that stuff that far away will fly back in a relatively short period of time. So that's why I only put it on for a short period of time. It's a little hard to talk with it on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a new shell in. So I have one over here, stashed, and we're going to fire it again. Just for hoots and giggles. All right, it's reloaded there. All right, firing again. All right. Okay, it's about lined up. All right, so we're ready. All right, usually they'd put that ram pole right about there on the side. I'm just gonna put that there for now. All right, 3, 2, 1, and we are firing. All right, so as you can see there, it took a little bit longer for the blast to hit. That's because I adjusted the range and elevation a little bit off camera before the next shot. And you saw me look to the side there. It's because something flew back here, so you'd be surprised to see that even shots that far out, things still fly back here. So that is why the mask and everything. But that is about it for the gun. You've seen the name, you've seen what the name means, all the description of all the parts, how it works, the basic idea of that, how it shoots, listen to the sounds that it makes when it shoots and the distance and everything like that. And then all that's really left is to get an idea of what it's like in battle, which there will be videos obviously soon to come with that. But anyway, guys, now I'm going to roll a short video collage of this before we end the video. Alright guys, so now you get the gist of this gun. This gun is a big artillery gun, not as big as some, but has a bigger shell, and we will see this used in sieges or wherever it needs to be used on the battlefield. Haven't made any major battle videos on the channel yet, just because making small battle videos is extremely difficult now with the editing. But it does become a really good end product. But I will incorporate this if needed, as well as with the other artillery as well. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. So please like and subscribe, so it helps out the Vanderpool Variety channel. And stay tuned for anything else that I do with the channel and for the next video detailing this in action.